Whoops, wrong one. Hold on. All right, there you are. Hello. We are talking about the Cup Series race at Martinsville in this one here. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to put them in chat. We will talk about them as we kind of get to natural breaks in the broadcast and everything for this. We're going to look at a couple things before we get into the actual race. First and foremost, if you enjoy any of the content, if I've helped you do anything in terms of DFS, would you please consider joining PayDirt.com? At the moment, you can still use code PD Welcome for 50% off your first month. Since the MLB season started, which was dictated or labeled as when prices would increase, now the monthly price is $50. So if you want 50% off of that, off your first month, please use the code PD Welcome at the link in the description below. That'll take you to the PayDirt website. Some things I want to talk about really fast regarding the stuff. Okay, now if you've been watching and everything, the last couple weeks have been really good from a projection standpoint and a build standpoint, and specifically, going through personally how I'm building stuff. And the one thing that I just have never understood, and it's rearing its head again, is how the field is playing some of these slates. Okay, now we had the discussion last week, I believe, with Larson and why he wasn't played at Darlington. Okay, and we move on to yesterday's race with Tanner Gray. Right now, Tanner Gray was 50% owned. Okay, he was starting in the 13th position, and I had 0 of Tanner Gray, and I projected him around like a 4.9 value. I don't remember the exact. Here, I'll bring it up really fast. And where are we at here? I gave him 46.25 points, and he just seemed like a bad play at that projection. I liked Allgaier, clearly. We talked about how much I liked Ross Chastain. I liked the idea of playing Austin Hill and stuff. And so I had drastically different builds from the field. And so what I want to talk about specifically is, obviously we had that gigantic crash, which I mentioned, and I built specifically for a big crash at the end of the race yesterday. Now, unfortunately, Green and Burton were both involved in that, but this lineup specifically was sitting between 4th and 18th for the majority of the race until that happened. The thing that just confuses me is I just don't understand how this is possible. Like, what are people doing? Like, I have 3 drivers scoring 8 points or less, and I'm still cashing in a field of 9,000 people with this lineup. I don't understand why people didn't play Allgaier. I don't understand why Hill and Chastain weren't owned and weren't owned more, and I don't understand why Tanner Gray was 50% owned. Yes, I mean he had ran very well the last 2 races there, um, but I mean these are just examples of at least me being naturally different this year, and the PayDirt users being different this year, and practically avoiding um, either stuff that has been busting for a lot of the cash plays, or being overweight on people that are just not being played enough. Like I just don't know why people didn't play more Allgaier yesterday. As we move on to today's race, let's look back at last 4, and we're going to see. And specifically what I'm looking at right now is the amount of laps led coming from people. We can also look at the amount of people in the top 10 leading laps. And like I said, I do apologize. I am sick, as stated in the video last week. I was taking care of everybody in my house because they were sick, and then just natural delay of stuff. So I'm sick right now, but could be worse. I've been worse. as we look back these last 4 races here, I'm ideally I'm wanting to just visualize where or what potentially is going on with laps led and stuff. And these are situations to where, yet again, I think mean projections are pretty deceiving in some situations, because in 2 of these races we've seen somebody lead, over, actually we had 2 people lead over 150 laps here, one over 200. Pretty much no other lap leader. Now, obviously, yes, especially at a short track, especially Martinsville, 40 and stuff is going to be pretty heavy in terms of laps led points and potentially fast lap points. But we're seeing that these laps led are pretty spread out for the most part. Even if we go back more and we look back at the 2 races in 2023, I don't really want to go back any farther than that. We're seeing 2 people over 100 here with 80, 66. And then in this last one, we're seeing 100, 100, 30, 30, 30, 30. So I would lean much more towards trying to nail as many potential lap leaders as possible in today's race. Now, where are these lap leaders coming from? We're just going to very quickly look at the starting positions, right? And we're seeing a high majority of these coming from the top 11, top 12, and then obviously if somebody just has a fast car or they're able to take advantage of, my bad, we're looking at starting position because I'm a dumbass. Probably even, well, we're still got top 12. Oh, this one's a bit more spread out. So when we're looking at this race today, I am much more likely to be playing more than probably 2 drivers in the starting the top 10, at least 1 to 2. I'm going to go and take this back off now so we can chit chat. Here we go. Yep. Mainly because I just don't really want to be giving stuff away because I do that pretty much every race in some form or fashion. But when I look at this race here, I mean, my main contenders for laps led, I think Denny Hamlin makes a really good play in general. And I think, here, let me bring my stuff up on this side. When we look at who's been decently fast at these tracks, specifically Joe Gibbs and Hendrick here, we have 2 favorites, or we have 2 guys who have been very, very decent favorites here, with Hamlin and Byron on the front row. I think Hamlin, Byron, Gibbs are probably your 3 main contenders that you could argue to lead laps. I mean, Ty Gibbs has been incredibly decent at incredibly decent. He's been incredibly good at short track specifically. As stated, I think by default this year, until he reaches a $9,200 price tag, you probably want at least 15 to 18 to 20% of Ty Gibbs by default on every slate, no questions asked. But I really like Hamlin and Byron to potentially kind of flip flop here as main lap leaders. I also really like Hocevar. I really like Reddick today. When I'm looking at potentially trying to slam as many lap leaders as possible, when we're looking at the pricing for this race, I mean, we have Reddick at 9.5, Logano at 9,000, Elliott at 9.7. I think it's a slate that if you're playing Hamlin or Byron, it's very unlikely that you're playing Bell, Blaney, or Larson in those lineups. Or even still, I think it's very unlikely that you play Hamlin and then pair him with one of the 10K guys starting, from 11th to 13th. I think ideally you probably want to play Hamlin and Byron together. Because of that, I don't really have a lot of interest in Bell, Blaney, and Larson today. And due to that, I really like the 9 and 8K range today, and kind of building more balanced lineups, with, potentially Hocevar, Reddick, Chase Elliott specifically. I really, really like Elliott today from a hand build and tournament perspective today. I just potentially like his upside. We also have, Bubba Wallace, Busher, and Priest. Okay, sorry. I don't remember what I was saying. I think it was about Priest Bubble. Yeah. I like Bubba Wallace, Priest, and Busher today, starting 11th, 15th, and 17th and stuff. Those are really my like takes on this slate. In terms of value, and we'll kind of talk more about build perspective in a second and stuff. But in terms of value and kind of where to finish out lineups, I have a lot of guys very, very similar, right on the cusp of value, right on the cusp of being decent plays in the back half of the field. I really don't have a favorite between Ty Dillon, Nemechek, Noah Gregson, Austin Dillon, Gilliland, um, even Michael McDowell. These guys are all similar to me. Now, when we get to short tracks with this many laps led, there is a potential, or not a potential. This is where punting is much more likely to be efficient and work out, especially when we're looking at races to where we potentially can have 4 to 5 guys lead at least over 40 laps on top of probably your main lap leaders and stuff. And so punting down in the 4K range, um, Bristol, Richmond, and Martinsville are the 3 most likely tracks that stuff works out. So, I mean, because you have to have Austin Hill, Cody Ware, Ty Dillon in the pool. But I really don't have a favorite in the value range at all today. I'm going to specifically play whatever is just given to me in the back half of the field in order to get my lineups up top with potential lap leaders. I mean, that is, I can't be any more honest or blanket about that. Um, I I don't really care who I play from 28th on back, and I don't really care how much of those guys I get, because for me, they're all projected very similar. So in this video, or in this live stream, I'm focusing more on who I want to pair up top with these lap leaders and stuff. And that's more so what I'm focusing on here. So let's go ahead and bring up this little guy here. Actually, no, I'm not going to bring anything up today. We'll just look at the chat. Okay, so top 5 lap leaders, and yes, I would use it. I'm probably going to use at least 3 to 4 lap leaders. Now, what does that mean? Okay, for me, over the years, I've learned that means different things, different people. Okay, I think Hocevar makes a lot of sense at $7,200. Do I expect him to lead more than 70 laps today? No, I don't think Hocevar will potentially even lead today, but I like the potential upside from a guy who's $7,000, right? I like a person like Ty Gibbs at 8,500. Okay, so like if I'm playing a lineup that has Hamlin, Hocevar, and Ty Gibbs in it, just for example, right? I haven't finalized anything yet. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but at this moment, I view that as that's that's 3 lap leaders. That's somebody that I have, or those are people that I have dictated that I at least have some fast laps and laps led allocated towards in my baseline projections, right? If I were to punt in that lineup and then potentially throw in William Byron in it, now that is a very top heavy lineup, but by default, that lineup would finish with 5 lap leaders. Okay, so I don't really like the term or like using rules and stuff when it's like, hey, if you're using this, would you dictate that, or whatever? How many lap leaders would you use? I usually take care of that because I use raw projections and stuff. If you're projected to score well, like for example, my guys that I have projected for over 50 points today, I'll include Briscoe in it because he's at 48, but he's not a lap leader. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys projected for over 50 points a day. If I include those over 40, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 9 guys. So I would ideally like to have at least 3 of those guys in most of my lineups. If I just run stuff naturally, I'll usually get to that anyway. But I think you should have 3 to 4 guys you could realistically see getting the lead. Now, how does that happen? You got to put yourself in position to be there, either during, and it's not even going to be under yellow. It'd be probably under a potential green flag pit stop in stage 3, or being able to flip the field when it comes to um, stage points or whatever and stuff like that. I think it's going to be very hard to see people really pass for the lead during the race unless you just have a drastically faster car. Um, so, if I start a lineup with Denny Hamlin and William Byron, your first and second starters, which I think is a very pretty decent start, right? Yet again, throw in a play in the 5K, doesn't matter. We're just talking about stuff here. Um, we're going to be roughly leaning or landing against probably 7,600 to $8,100 left over for your remaining three drivers. As stated, I think Ty Gibbs makes a lot of sense. I think somebody like for like potential lap leaders and stuff. I think Chase Elliott makes a lot of sense. Whatever you want to do for that, you're most likely going to have at least three guys there. Other people that I liked are people like Priest, you know, Chris Buescher, people like that. These are individuals who are going to be racing in the top 12 at least, has the potential to fall into the lead. Very similar to like Harrison Burton yesterday, right? The lineups that I showed you and the well, though I think the winning lineup had Dean Thompson in it. But yesterday, when we look at how people naturally got to the lead, it was flip-flopping stages. Okay, in order to do that and at least maintain the lead, you need to have a somewhat decent car, right? So it's not going to be something like AJ Allmendinger staying out, flipping a stage, and leading a bunch of laps. Okay, I would label a potential lap leader as somebody who can at least run top 15 on raw speeds, and then could potentially fall into the lead due to flipping the stage. That could be people like Chastain, Keselowski, Chris Buescher, Ryan Preece, so on and so forth here. Long-winded way here, but I would try and have 3 to 4 people that you could see leading laps. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't get it at all. I think Ross is a very, very good play today, especially from a just build perspective. I mean, he fits literally anything. He's basically free. Okay, for his upside. Same thing with like with how we've seen Ty Gibbs be although he's slowly creeping up and stuff. Um, I think you play. I think you should play Chastain today at like 25%. I'd much rather take him over somebody who could potentially go down a lap early. And I mean, I have him clearing value. And that's for everything considered. I think that makes Ross pretty at least value from a 5x perspective. I guess kind of other like one-offs and stuff that looks good in my stuff. Austin Dillon is a guy that I'd probably happily take a stance on. At least in the back, as stated, I don't really have a favorite, but from a projection standpoint, Ty Dillon, Nemechek, Austin Dillon seem to be the better guys back there. But I really, if I can help it, I really want to have most of my lineups coming from people in the top 20. Uh, I either want one punt from like 28th on back, which everybody in that range is a punt outside of Kyle Busch, right? That's AJ Gillen, Austin Dillon, Gregson, Nemechek, Stenhouse, Ware, Ty Dillon, Austin Hill. I either want one of those guys in a lineup or two of those guys in a lineup, and then everybody else probably from 20th forward. Um, in today's slate. That's where I'm looking at here. Hmm. I think. I mean that's mainly it. Now I've personally been pretty hit and miss at short tracks. For me, so I mean, I've taken down Cup Series contest here. I mentioned that yesterday when Byron, not this last win that Byron had, but the one in like 2022 or something. But I would not be shocked to see this race go off the rails at some point. Although I don't think it will, due to the fact not being a playoff race, being the spring race and stuff. I'm not too worried about that. If I had to select people to win, Blaney would probably be. Let me look here. I have him finishing 5th today, so probably the 5th most likely one. Winning in fantasy is, or clearly is different, right? But I really like Ty Gibbs today. Now, I don't think my personal ownership would eclipse like 25 or 30 in this, but like I guess in terms of upside, although I mean, if you're betting people to win in this, I mean, I don't know, dude. Like just play DFS, don't sports bet or anything like that. But I think Ty Gibbs has a pretty good shot at doing well today. Yeah. So while I mean that is, I don't exactly know what that means. Passing is. Let me look at this stuff really fast, so I'm not like yapping out of my butt here, right? Like, what does passing mean? What does that mean? So last week at Darlington, 7th to 3rd all day, 6th to 16th Vegas, 5th to 1st at Phoenix with, I mean, not dominating the race at Phoenix at all, right? Like what does that mean? Best passing. What does that mean here? Like if anything, Logano was the better guy getting through traffic at Phoenix, right? I'm not like trying to shit on this thing. I'm just saying, like from what I'm looking at, like that's not a conclusion that I would get to. And like, but like if you're a top 6 car, like you can do that anywhere, anytime. Like Briscoe, Bell, Larson, Byron, you know, I don't think Blaney is the best car or the best one since they updated stuff. I know we're on slightly different tires and a slightly different package, but I would not give that to Blaney. I think if anything, that title is a bit inconclusive at the moment. But I would not say he's the best. I would probably say from what I've looked at, I'm not looking at my stuff I pulled just from thinking out loud. I think the best guy that we've seen who's been able to go through the field has been Bell, and I'm debating to give second to Briscoe. And then Reddick, right? Now Reddick's been in clean air a lot. But that's where I'd lean that to. Not I mean not a bunch. Here we can kind of bump this back up and look through really quick here. You know, look back. We'll look back at the last 5 races again. We'll specifically look back at the people who finished at the back of the field and see how many laps they're down. Right? We'll do 4. We don't need to go all the way. So we have 18 people on the lead lap, 24 at 1 lap down. at the end of the race. And now, granted, this is going with enough cautions to bring people back in the lead lap, but let's see, 22 one lap, or 22 lead, 27 one lap. Now this is a 500, 17 lead lap, 22 one lap. Does race get range shortened? No, we went over because it's a 400 lap race. 14 one lap, 20 or 14 lead lap, 24 one lap. It just depends on if stage 1 and 2 go green, right? Like how many breakups do we have in these long run stages, right? So like 77 are going to put people down, 46 going to put people down, 59 and 128 obviously going to put people down. I think it's, if we start going over probably 60 lap run, we'll probably start eating away at these bottom guys here. But let me take this back off. When we're looking at these guys in the back of the field, like, you know, I think you said a Stenhouse, right? Now, it's interesting that you bring Stenhouse up because, as stated, I would play whatever my stuff gives me from that. I have Stenhouse rated as the worst driver of those guys. I'd literally probably take the rest of the guys in the back versus him. But what we're looking for is probably at least a 30 to a 32 type of scoring day for them, or a value in the 4K range, right? So, you know, AJ, we need to get to like probably 20th to start hitting that, right? Dylan would probably need to get to 23rd or 22nd to get to that. Now, the good thing about these, they're good or bad, we don't really envision them realistically finishing like 17th, right, or anything. So these guys, while yes, they are at risk of going a lap down, these are all guys who are not expected to be on the lead lap at any point, like realistically, right? Like we expect these guys to go one lap down, right? Our usefulness for them is not dictated by them going a lap down at a place like, you know, Vegas or whatever, right? Because we're expecting, you know, half the field to basically be one lap down or more at the end of this thing. That's not really a deterrent for either playing them or not playing them. I'm personally not concerned about that. You know, we should only have like 18 guys on the lead lap anyway at the end of this race, and because it's so difficult to pass, I'm not really concerned about them. And I would absolutely, I mean that's the, you know, those are the bills that I was talking about in the beginning. I think every lineup should at least have one of those guys, just because that's how we're building. And like each build, ideally the builds you want to do is going to have one of those guys. If you're paying up for people, you're probably going to have builds with two of them. I think the builds with one is probably going to be the one that leads optimal. So I mean, you're doing everything right, Triple J. So yeah, I think that's mainly it. I mean, I don't really have anything else talk about. It's a pretty standard Martinsville race, and I mean, if you have access to PayDirt, you see all my stuff, and you see where I have people most likely to finish from a DFS standpoint. I know you brought up Blaney. I do have him third most likely to be the top scoring guy in the slate. I guess that's kind of noteworthy there. But yeah, I think that's mainly it. I think we're going to cut it there, and I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you for watching, and thank you for putting comments and everything like that. See you later. Bye-bye. Oh, wait. I like Rex today and AD. Is that bad? Rex and Austin Dillon. Well, we all like Rex, right? Like that Porsche crash was really cool last night. It's a shame that didn't fly to the stands at Suzuka. but that was cool. I would not build for Rex today like yesterday. I think that type of stuff is unlikely to happen in the Cup Series. So I would not build specifically for Rex today. I would chase lap leaders. Oh, Reki and AD. My bad, sorry. I don't like Stenhouse. As stated, I like anybody from 28th on back other than Stenhouse. Yeah, that's it. But I do like Austin Dillon. I don't think. Um, I sadly don't think anybody dies. Okay, what do you mean by that? You talking like specifically this year? In practice, what are you like? We can dive into this, right? Like what? He's 11th on median. I didn't see anything notable in practice. Are you just talking about like him in general this year? I will happily expand on this before we go. But I want to know specifically your what you mean by this. Oh no, that's actually just Larson. Larson is actually just a dumb piece of shit. Um, like what tracks have we been realistically speaking, what tracks have we been at that Larson has been expected to lead? Like when we look, we'll do this together, right? What tracks do we envision Larson to do well at? That is intermediates, as like the primary source of that, right? Where have we been at this year? That would also, where did we end last year, right? Martinsville, Phoenix. Where have we been this year? We've been to Daytona, Atlanta, Circuit of the Americas, Phoenix. Vegas and Darlington are the only two races that you would perceive Larson being competitive at, and the fact that Hamlin and Reddick, the fact that the Toyotas have been so drastically faster than uh, the other people, like we've seen Larson, you know, not be. I gotta look at my stuff really fast to see where he falls in line at. But just actually, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, when I pulled the Darlington stuff earlier, he's like, the sixth or seventh most consistent car this year. Um, I mean, that's just kind of where we're at. I mean, we've seen the Toyotas eclipse Hendrick, um, which, I mean, looking back at years and years, they've been the most consistent at intermediates. It just depends on, if they get late race yellows. Like specifically, I think in like 2022 or 2023, they were like the most dominant. It was back when Kyle was at Joe Gibbs. Like they were the most dominant car, and they just kept on losing races at the end due to tons of yellows and stuff. I mean, Larson is just. I mean, this is kind of just how Larson is. But we've only been to two tracks where we've expected Larson to do something. Or I guess you would expect him to do something. But when you look at the like how they're running this year, like he's gonna need to be. He's gonna need to. What Larson would need to show, to answer your question, is when we go to Kansas and Bristol, right? We would need to see them have what like right now we can visualize him being like the sixth best car at intermediate tracks, right? What do we need to see from him in order to potentially slam him or project him well in that next type of track type race, right? We need to see practice speeds that are an outlier. So what does that mean? He needs to basically be the fastest car in whatever practice session he's in. Now, why would that be an outlier? Because that's not the speed that he's replicating right now. Okay, so the first thing would be he's just by default the fastest car in a practice session, and he qualifies probably in the top three. Right, that would then indicate that we would probably want to play him. If I don't see that, I would expect to see the performance that we've seen from Larson so far. but I mean, we've only been to Vegas and Darlington this year that we would expect him to be the best, one of the better cars at, right? So yeah, I mean, it seems like some guys are having like really bad runs to start the year or whatever, right? But two plate races, road course. I mean, we haven't really been to any decent tracks yet, and we really don't fall into a rhythm where people are at until we get to May, you know. Plus, we have a week off next week for Easter. So I would very heavily look to see how people are doing once we enter probably Kansas, right? Kansas in the May, since we have Talladega, that doesn't matter. Um, yeah, I think that's mainly it. I also want to kind of go back on this point. This is why specifically I value recent form. Now, not Martinsville, how do you do last week at Darlington and stuff, but this is why I specifically look at the recent form way higher than track history at this point. Um, Yet again, I don't look at driver rate. I just pull where these guys are at during their green flag laps in terms of speed, and then if you wreck out, I don't count that against you. Um, but that's the data point that I focus on more rather than track history and stuff, because Larson's like the fifth, sixth best car right now. But I guess if you're looking back at races where you expected him to like kill the field and stuff, yeah, this has been an off year, or an off thing. But I just think Larson's like he's not bad, right? But I think he's overvalued based on what he can do, because his ranges of outcomes, we talked about this last year a lot with SaberSim or ranges of outcomes stuff. Like the percentile for Larson is the widest of any driver in any race, because he has the lowest floor and the highest ceiling. And his 99th percentile doesn't accurately represent what that range is, right? Like his 99th percentile is, if we cut it off at like 100 points, 100 DFS points or whatever, right? His 99th percentile is at like 98 points, where like 90% of the time, if he gets the lead or if he runs decently, he's going to be the highest scoring driver, right? If he's not even able to do that, he's going to probably be one of the worst plays on any given slate. Um, Now, obviously, that means like it's very common sense, but when we're looking at like ranges of outcomes and stuff, that's very being aware of that is very telling and stuff. I don't know if that made sense. Maybe I feel like that made sense, but I probably did not explain that in any form or fashion that made sense at all. Any Zane Smith, no Zane Smith today. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.